Hi, and welcome to our orientation. So, thank you so much for signing up to join Caribbean Climate Network. And we're so happy to have you part of our space and to continue working with you and collaborating with you the next few months, years, lifetimes, as long as you're happy to be part of our space. So, as you know, our name is the Caribbean Climate Network, and this is our logo. The pinkish color, it's actually a representative of a bromeliad, which is common across most of Caribbean countries. And we have the hummingbird, which we know um, is very common in the Caribbean as well. So many different species in so many of the islands. So we thought it was really nice to have these two um, Caribbean elements in our logo. So this session really is just to tell you a bit about who we are, what we do, what we're working on currently, what we have coming up, how you can be involved, and anything else that you would like to know about the network. So we'll get into it. Um, yeah, this is just our map. Um, so we have all the countries here. Uh, if you like, you can move a star to show us like where you're based right now. You can move a star to the country. I'll just ask Katrina to just put the link in the chat. We also have currently persons in our network from Haiti, Puerto Rico, Grenada, Guyana, Trinidad, uh, St. Lucia, Dominica, Cuba, Belize, and a few that I think I'm missing. But we're trying to reach as many persons across the region as possible. So we're really happy that we've been able to touch base with persons across the region. So getting into who we are, uh, we're actually connected to a global organization called 350.org. And 350.org, it's a global organization working on building a future that's just, prosperous, equitable, and safe from the effects of climate change. And 350.org as an organization really advocates for 100% renewable energy and working to prevent new fossil fuel projects anywhere, especially in vulnerable communities, vulnerable ecosystems. So, a cool fact about 350 .org, the name actually, is that the number 350 represents 350 parts per million, which is the safe concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We've actually exceeded that amount years ago. We're, I think, over 400 parts per million. But it was really important to kind of have the number in the name to support like the goals and really showcase what 350.org advocates for. This slide, it's a map showing all the different locations across the globe that 350 works in. There are local groups, local movements all across the world. We have in the Pacific, in Europe, in North America, even some in South America. But as you can see, there are not so many in the Caribbean region. And that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to provide local support here in the region through our network. The map is actually not updated, but I'm happy to share that we have two new movements in the region, and that's the Haiti Climate Network, which was formed earlier this year. And we have the Trinidad and Tobago Climate Network, which was recently made official. So we're really working on local support in the region, and we're hoping to see many more dots on the map in the future. So now that you know how we're connected to the global movements, we want to share a bit of our local story. So as I mentioned, we kind of recognize that there isn't or there wasn't a lot of local support in the Caribbean from 350.org, and we wanted to change that. So in 2019, that's when one of our colleagues, Amira, actually started to bring support to the region. And in 2020, we had our first event, which was a virtual training program, a leadership building training program. And we had a lot of persons participate from across the region, different countries in the Caribbean, persons who wanted to improve their leadership capacity to build on the movements that they were already doing in their communities. So that was our first event in 2020. And persons really enjoyed being part of the space. They kind of saw the value in being connected to persons from across the region. They wanted to stay in touch to kind of work on collective similar issues. And that's when the Caribbean Climate Network was formed. That's when we decided to officially be a group. And so we moved on to 2021, where we continue to provide that support for members to execute their local initiatives. We had ongoing meetings and trainings to continue building their capacity. We also participated in global gatherings with other 350 groups across the globe. And we had our second major event, which was another virtual training called the Caribbean School of Climate. And it was actually held in three different languages. So we had English, Spanish, and French to really reach um, all the different language, all the different speaking countries in the Caribbean. So a lot of times when we do work in the region, countries like Haiti, Martinique can get excluded, or Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic can be excluded as well because of the language barriers. And we really wanted to kind of remove that barrier, bridge our connections with those countries as well, because it's important if we're representing the entire Caribbean to have voices from everyone, regardless of the language that they speak. So we were really happy to have that training in 2021. Persons got a chance to connect with more people across the region. We built a network some more. Other persons came on board. And persons, they got a chance to share more about their stories and local impacts and kind of decide on the route that they wanted to take with the network. So in 2022, building on all of that, we continued to do regional recruitments and coaching so that we could connect with more persons and more countries across the region. We have monthly meetings to build the team, get to know each other. We also have bilingual trainings in English and Spanish every month, two trainings most months. And to build on all of that, now that we have more persons in the network, now that persons really want to take action on the ground, we're mobilizing in October for a regional week of action so that everyone could come together and really raise their voices louder. For the week of action, we also have some grant to support local initiatives. And we're also working on our Adapt Now to Save Lives campaign, which Katrina will tell you more about.
Thank you so much. So you can go on to the next slide where we're going to talk about adapting now to save lives. So everybody here we all know already that climate change is the biggest risk to human life in the coming years. It could be anything to do with increasing the amount of extreme weather. It could be anything to do with sea level rise. Now, the Caribbean region, we know, is one of the most vulnerable to these threats. Because most of our people live on the coast, most of our people have, housing that isn't built to code. We have poor access to healthcare. There's so much that we are exposed to in terms of our climate vulnerability. And so not just in the Caribbean region, but globally, there's still talk about what is climate change and is it real, which is so strange because the science is there. So the lack of global climate action and the Caribbean being at risk, we as the Caribbean people have to collaborate and mobilize. And our leaders, yes, they may have things on paper, but to actually have adaptation on the ground for the communities that are at most risk, I think that is where our focus needs to be. So our aim at Caribbean Climate Network is to empower communities to be safer against the threat of climate change and all the associated hazards that are coming about because of it. Next slide. So we have come up with Adapt Now to Save Lives, because we want to adapt now in order to save as many lives as we can that is going to be affected by these climate hazards. And what we want is resilient healthcare systems. We want food security, because as we know, a lot of our food is imported. We want safe corals, mangroves, seagrass beds, and marine ecosystems, because they provide us with ecosystem services. We want secure housing. We want sustainable jobs. And we want so much more that isn't listed here. There could be something in your specific country that you need, in your specific community that you need. So for example, me in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not going to have the same issues that somebody in, say, Guyana might have. We don't have the problem of, encroaching fresh water into the salt water in all our areas, whereas you all may have that problem more prevalent. So it's all about knowing what we have in each area, and then how Caribbean Climate Network can then help you to help your community. Next slide. So what Caribbean Climate Network does, one of our main things that we do is capacity building. So once you have an internet connection, you will be able to access anything, because everything that we're doing, there's no cost attached to it. So we're trying to share our capacity as much as we can. And we're doing this via training, coaching, guides, and direct support. Now, the way that we do the trainings is that we have them in multiple languages right now, just in Spanish and English, but we're trying our best to be as inclusive as possible, so that wherever you think that you need training in, so for example, if it's event coordination, if it's climate literacy, if it's anything at all, we will be able to facilitate a training session to suit your needs. So it's always great to have feedback to know what it is we can support you with. We can do coaching, individual coaching, making sure that we are helping you reach your goals as an organization on the ground, as an individual in the climate space. We also have guides. So for example, we have the declaration that is basically what we want governments of the Caribbean to sign on to. We have other guidelines for different things that will allow you to reach your fullest potential in whatever it is that you're trying to achieve on the ground with regard to climate adaptation. And direct support. You can call us. We're going to be always an email away if you have any questions or need any other support. Then we're into digital organizing. So our social media aspects, we're trying to build content and get excitement around what we are doing. We have occasional grant opportunities. So like Afifa mentioned, we have the Week of Action coming up, where we have small grants available for community members or individuals to do an action towards climate adaptation. We also want to use storytelling to inspire action for climate adaptation, because how else are we going to connect to each other and to connect our stories to the world is through our own telling of our situations and giving it life. The only way that somebody's going to care about climate is if they understand how it is affecting us at the individual level, at the emotional level sometimes. And storytelling is a great tool to use in that fight against climate, climate, and not just the paranoia, but people not understanding that climate change is a big issue for people in the Caribbean. Then we also support local initiatives, campaigns, and events, right? And next slide. I also want to just say hello to Marsha.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Marcia.
So, Marcia, sorry. So we can just give you a little overview of what we've missed. So we spoke about 350.org, which is our organization out of the US, and then Caribbean Climate Network, which is spanning of the entire Caribbean region. And as the slide said before, that is what we do. And these photos here are fun things that we do together. So we hosted a virtual paint party where we discussed the importance of mangroves as resilient coastline adaptation strategies, protected areas management, and those things while creating art. So that's a nice way to connect the emotions to what is actually happening. And art is also a wonderful way of connecting people together. And of course, all of these activities are free. And if you do have any activities that you'd like us to do virtually, please let us know so that we can make them available. Then the image on the top right is where we had a tree planting exercise, because when we had our retreat earlier this year in Trinidad and Tobago, we flew in members from throughout the Caribbean. And so to offset our carbon footprint, we planted trees. And these are large flowering trees. We calculated our carbon emissions from the flights, and we partnered with a couple organizations, at the Caroni Swamp, which is a protected area, and we ended up planting trees together. And then the photo on the bottom right is us at San Fernando Hill, which is a national park in Trinidad, where we conducted different sessions on our climate story. And we told our stories together, and it was a great bonding moment for our team members. And we hope that we are going to see you all in person as well when we are able to meet again, hopefully very soon. Next slide. So our upcoming activities. Afifa, you want me to take this or?
I can share on this.
Okay.
So you've learned a bit about who we are. Katrina's told you so much about what we do. So we want to share with you some things that we have coming up so that you could get involved. We have coming up, firstly, is a training next week on September 7th. So it's going to be around building a great action. It's to support our event hosts for the week of action. But even if you're not hosting an event for the week of action, you can still join and participate. It just highlights tips and tricks to ensure that any event you host runs smoothly. So it's open to anyone and everyone. And we'll share the registration link in the chat in a few. So you can join us if you're interested and if you have time, because it's usually at 6 p.m. And then we also have our monthly meetings on the last Tuesday of every month. So this is usually a team meeting where we get to check in with everyone, meet new faces, have some fun, but also just get updates on what's happening within countries, and also discuss any key topics or make decisions on anything that we need to make or discuss as a group. So it's a really great space to get to know other persons in the movement. And of course, we have our week of action coming up in October, on October 1st to 8th. So it's really where we're asking persons to host events in their countries around the theme Action for Adaptation, just so that we could raise more awareness around the need for adaptation measures in the Caribbean, and also show a united voice so that our leaders can take the topic more seriously. We can call on our leaders to take the necessary actions and kind of build that pressure to ensure that something is done and that we can protect lives of persons most vulnerable, protect our lives, because we all are vulnerable to climate change. So this is a map, the image on the left, it's a map that has all the registered events so far. So we have in Guyana, and we also have, I'm actually not sure which country you're joining in from, Marcia, but I'm hoping that
I'm in Barbados.
Barbados. Okay.
I work throughout the region, so I'll tell you a little bit more when you're finished.
Sure. So I actually don't recall anyone registering any events as yet in Barbados. But we have some other events in Trinidad, in Grenada, St. Lucia, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and Cuba. So we'll share the link to the website in the chat as well. You could access the map there. You could click on the points, get more details on the events, contact details as well if you want to reach out to any of the persons to join or attend their events. But if you would like to host an event in your country, we're also willing to support you. There's a registration form on the website, and we can work with you to have to execute your event successfully.
Okay, great. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about after you finished as well. Yeah.
Great. So these are just flyers for the week of action. They're up on our social media at Caribbean Climate Network on Facebook and Instagram. So you can hop on over and follow us there, share the flyer with friends, other persons that you think would be interested, and just keep up to date with what's happening through our social media pages as well.